What's up, Pine Logical? Gabe Baker back again. For those who don't know me, if you do know me, thank you for coming in. I always appreciate you guys coming in and viewing my videos. So what we're going to talk about today is why I do what I do. And I can understand, too, about how it might be pretty hard to grasp the idea about what I do. But if people have been with me since the start, they kind of should get the gist. But my entire perspective has really changed a lot over the course of my first video to really right now. And the people who remember my first video, you should remember my first video, I guess. But I did take it down just because I just didn't relate to that anymore. And that's why I took it down, was because that what I was trying to project on what I was trying to stand for, it didn't really kind of go with that. But I mean, it did, but it didn't. But just because that it first started off with just being able to be like, you can smoke pot and do whatever the heck you want. No, I mean, I kind of got rid of that too, just because that it's like I shouldn't be pushing that opinion on people, just because that it's just like, yes, there's negatives to smoking, but there's also there's positives. I'm not going to get into that just because it doesn't really matter. But being from where I am from my first video to where I am right now is that it's like I think I got a grasp on what I should be able to try to make sure that I can make you guys at least understand a little better. And so I did take I did do another take before I did this. So I wrote all my stuff down. So bear with me if I'm not looking at you guys and I'm looking down on my paper. So the things that I have learned over the course of doing all my videos has been a lot of different things. Acceptance about regardless of what your race is, what you believe in, your sexual orientation, your opinions, because your opinion matters too, but it also has to make sure that you're not being judgmental just because people don't understand your opinion on how you understand your opinion, because we absorb information differently than some other people are going to be able to do that. And making sure that you can believe in yourself and be accepting of yourself for your dreams and your desires for what you want to do, because that is a big thing that I'm constantly trying to preach, is that just because that you aren't at where you're at now, but that's okay. But as long as you keep working for it, you keep grinding, you keep doing the work into the things that you want to do, and you'll get to where you want to be. So being accepting of where you're at right now, who you are right now, is being able to make sure that you can accept of where you are in your dreams and your desires, or even your work ethic for whatever that might pertain. So, and then the other thing is the learning experience. I learned a lot about myself being able to do these videos, because I learn about how I can speak a little bit more clearly, how I can make sure to learn from what I could be doing wrong, or being able to actually like how I present myself, which I mean, I don't really care half the time just because that I am me, the acceptance part, because I am me and that's all that really matters. But I do change and learn about myself a lot more. And then I learn about you guys too, because even though that you guys might comment on my stuff or might not, but if you comment on it, I learn a little bit more about you, but for how you might be relating to that topic, or how some of the misinformation that I might have missed, or it's just because that it all really just depends on being able to see this perspective, if we're on the same page or if we're not on the same page. And that's okay too, but I learned a lot from what you guys talk about, or at least comment on, because I expect feedback. I don't expect it to be critical criticism. I expect it to be constructive criticism, but I can't always expect people to be like that. And then I learn about the topics. I learn about the research that I put into some of these things. Like, I don't do extensive research because there's so much research that I could be doing about it that I'd end up writing in like a whole section in my freaking notebook that end up being like 7 to 9 pages long. And then my videos might be an hour, and I mean, that hour might be pretty interesting, but I mean, it's just like, I just kind of sometimes I just want to make it short and simple, so that, I'm not really taking up your entire day of being able to make sure that you can learn about these things. But it depends on what the topic is. It depends on the amount of research that I put into it. So, I mean, there might be some times where I might be doing an hour-long discussion or a 2-hour-long discussion, but it really just depends, like I said. And then, I learn about the ideas too. Like, I'm like with the topics, is that it's like I'm learning with the idea, because ideas change. So many different things change. Opinions change, the amount of science that are coming from behind some of these things, some of the amount of like information that we have and that we don't have change every day. So being able to learn from these things is something that I'm really grateful for, and the things that I try to preach about is because that I'm trying to make sure that you guys learn just as much as you guys learn with me, because I'm learning just as much as you guys are too. And that's why the whole point of perfectionism kind of comes out, because nobody's perfect. Just because I do some of these videos on specific topics doesn't mean I expect them to be perfect. No, if we expect things to be 100% perfect, then I think it kind of all ends up becoming to a point to where we end up kind of letting ourselves down, because we expect it to be 100% perfect. And I don't even expect, like when I go to work, I don't expect that work day to be 100%. We're on top of everything, that we don't screw something up, because as long as I walk out of that building 70%, even 65%, I'm happy. That's just because that we at least got through the day, and that we learned from what mistakes we might have made that day, and then we just keep going on and we learn from that day. And thinking different. That's the next one. Thinking different. Like, I do believe that I think differently than a lot of other people might think about it, but because everybody thinks so differently, just because we have so many different perspectives, that, I don't see it as where I'm better than you. I don't think that you're better than me either, because we're all going to be going in the same place, 6 feet under at the end of the timeline, the end of our lifespan, or anything like that. And that came up when I was listening to a song earlier today called Think Different by Nujabes. He was a Japanese rapper, and I think he died in like 2011, something like that, in a bus crash. Really sad. But that song kind of piqued my interest a little bit, just because this is the one video that I wanted to do today, because I think different, and it's also another reason why I do what I do. And the first two things, like I said, is because I do them because I like doing them, because I know that I have confidence in myself that, yeah, I might not be perfect, that, everything's a learning experience, and that since I accept people for who they are, even accepting myself, that it doesn't matter, because, yes, we think different, but our perspectives can collide to make something really beautiful. And that's something that I think, that's why I look at this as like a creative aspect. And it is a creative aspect, because I look at these YouTube videos as art. It's the same thing for when people look at music like that. When they look at their actual drawings like that, is that the creative aspects are always there. They're always going to be something that we put ourselves into, we put our own emotion into it, and so therefore that it is something that is very creative, that's going to be blossoming as something, and people will appreciate it, and people won't appreciate it. Same thing with artwork. Not everybody likes the drawing just because it looks good. Some people are just going to look at it and be like, what the hell? Some people are going to be like, wow, I like that. I resonate with that. I like the colors. I like the picture. I like the emotion that it entails, and so on and so forth. And, because I'm opinionated does not mean I'm judgmental. Just because I'm opinionated doesn't mean that your opinion doesn't matter too, because everybody's opinion matters. Your voice matters. You existing matters, because we all are obviously blessed to be on this earth that we get to call our home, this floating rock in space, in this vast, possibly multi-dimensional universe. I'm only saying possible because not everybody believes in that, but that we are blessed to be able to have a life to where we can speak our opinion, where we can voice up our feelings, where we can voice what matters truly to us most. And the other thing that why I do what I do is because it's all about peace, love, and positivity. And I mean, it's not always going to be peaceful, every video that I do. It's not always going to be loving with every video that I do, but it's like, at least the one thing that I always try to do is that at least it's going to be positive, because I try to at least make something positive, even if it might be a sad topic, a nitty-gritty topic that not everybody's going to agree about, or just make sure that it's at least that we can try to get on the same page. Not everybody's going to be on the same page with me, and that's okay. I don't always expect to be on the same page with you guys about your opinions, because everybody's opinions is different. And that's why I like doing it. That's why it's really cool being able to do this, because it's being able to be so diverse, in my case, to where I can at least understand it if you make it make sense. And that's all really what we try to do as human beings, is try to make things make sense. It's hard when we have to make sure that we can put a lot of information, or make sure that we word it right so people can actually understand. But that's the whole point of the learning experience, is where we learn. We learn about other people. We learn about ourselves. We learn about our good skills. We learn about what could use a little bit more fine-tuning. And that's joyous to be able to actually look at these things like that. And change. Change is a big thing when it comes to this. We as people are constantly changing. With the time, we do need to be able to change with the times. Yes, there were some times back 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that was probably a little bit better, that things were looking a little bit more differently, but we always have to make sure that we change with the times. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in this constant case of nostalgia. It's not that we don't necessarily want to get caught in nostalgia, but being in that constant sense of where we wanted it because it was way better back when that happened. I mean, it kind of makes us feel like we're constantly in this stagnant moment to where we can't appreciate for what we have now, for the many things that are changing. Opinions are constantly changing. What is in and out of our control is constantly changing every day. We as humans are constantly changing every day. We try to make sure that we are better than what we were yesterday, better than what we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, however long or old you may be, is that we make sure that we can be in control of what we can actually be in control of, since we are evolving every day. Let's see what's next. And, fight or flight, because we are constantly fighting. Everybody. We might not be actually like physically fighting each other, but even when it comes to our opinions, that we are constantly fighting each other about what is right and what is wrong. And we're not going to know what that's going to really entail. We're not going to know that because we might talk to our opinion about this to this other person, that we either might be fighting them to make sure that we're constantly like somebody's right compared to the other person, or make sure that we are right ourselves, or flighting to where we just, because since we don't feel that, we don't run or we want to run away. But that is also into the point of, what was it? Your opinion, your voice matters. So that's where you shouldn't be scared to have to think that you need to flight, to run away just because that you think that your opinion doesn't matter. You don't want to get hurt. You want to be put yourself in these negative situations, which, use your discernment. You definitely don't want to constantly be throwing yourself into these negative things or throwing yourself into all these situations because you feel like you need to. You don't always need to be putting your opinion in everything that freaking comes up. And that's the tough thing that comes about when it comes to being opinionated. Everybody has an opinion on something. Even if we're by ourselves and we hear a conversation like right behind us, and all of a sudden somebody says something wrong, that honestly, instantly in our mind, that we're like, wow, I don't agree with that, or I do agree with that. I like that person, so on and so forth. And so then, since we're consistent in evolution, we have to make sure that we are evolving at our best pace. Not everybody's going to evolve at the same pace. Not everybody's going to be in the same mind state as you are. But as long as you know that I think that it'll add to your evolution of being able to change. Our environment is constantly changing. With our opinions, our environment is too. With our opinions also becomes where we absorb our opinions from, the people that we surround with, our parents, even from what we can learn from our own children, or just we're even absorbing for information, that our environment is constantly changing. So we need to be able to make sure that we can change with our environment, because since we are humans, that we are constantly changing, that we need to be able to make sure that we can evolve at a good, steady pace, even with our environment. And, make sure that we are constantly going forward. We can't go back. We can't go back and change the things that we screwed up on, or the things that we could have known that we could have done it a lot better, or knew that we could have had a better conversation or actually voiced a specific opinion, because if it was really at that case, we would have said it, we would have done it. But that's why we learn, right? Next one, and being proud of yourself. No matter, like I said, no matter what you have done, no matter who you were 5 or 10 years ago, is that you're proud of who you are today. That what you have done today is a good impact of what you can make sure that you can do next, or the next day, the next 5 days, the next month, the next year, the next 5 years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And where you are physically. Not everybody is proud or being able to actually appreciate for what we have physically and around us, like the people, or at least our environment. I had a little thing about this at work too, or about work, to where, since I'm trying to make sure that I can peak and expand, to where some people at work aren't trying to do that. They're trying to make sure that they can settle down in their area. And that's not my vibe, just because since I'm trying to expand so much, that's why I'm going to school, so I can get and surround myself in an area of where people are trying to make sure that they can better themselves. And that's one positive thing that I really see about school, is just because that I see it as, since everybody's trying to be better, they're trying to put themselves in an environment because they're trying to put themselves into something of what they want to do. That's kind of the environment that I want to be around right now. And yes, I have friends that are like that. They're making sure that they're trying to peak, expand. But it kind of sucks sometimes that when you're in that environment all the time, of where everybody's trying to settle down, you kind of feel like that little push, that little nudge of where it's all weighing down on you, to where it's like, oh, maybe I should just do that. No. You have to make sure you can see your own strength and know that. And even mentally, that be proud of where you are mentally. Yes, if you're not being able to be not seeing everything as a positive and you're thinking as a negative, you change with that. If you want to change for that, you will change that. And I believe in that, because I believe in you guys, that where that if you can see yourself being in that place to where that even mentally you are putting yourself down, or where you're putting your other self down, and that you can change for that and at least appreciate that, that's your first step forward. And even spiritually, spirituality is different for everybody, and it's not going to be anything to where you need to be judging people for what they believe in, their specific higher power, or so on and so forth. And this is going to be another video that I'm going to do, but this video is the one I'm trying to focus on right now. And the topics that I'm based on what I come up with, or what I come up with, are most of the things that I come up with on my own. And then that leads to I and you, or I think, what was it? No, never mind. That's the next one. But because of these topics that I come up with are the ones that I usually come up with, but it's because that it's something that has been focused like all week. It's the thing that keeps constantly popping up. The narcissism and ego, that was something that kept constantly popping up just because that I pertained to that, because it was something that I knew that I could delve research into. Not because I knew that I was going to be completely perfect at it, but because since I put my own way of feeling, of knowing that there were some of those things, of narcissism and egotistical things that I was doing, that I was like, okay, that's going to be my video about it, because I've been hearing about it all week, or it's something that's been constantly on my mind. And then when I constantly hear about these things, that is where I'm like, okay, that could be a really good video that I could do. So that's usually when I start doing them. Gratitude is another thing about why I do with what I do. And this is the one that connects to I and you and I matter, to where our opinion and our voice matters, because I'm grateful for the support that I get. Even I'm grateful for the support that I don't even get. As long as I'm at least grateful for what I have, my house, my friends that I do have, the people that do support me, I got to make sure that I'm grateful for it. And gratitude is something that you have to be able to mentally tell yourself all the time. It is not easy sometimes to be able to constantly give yourself that positive mind state at all times. But as long as you know that you can at least start being grateful about some of these things, then that's when all of a sudden things are going to start picking up a little bit. Like the stagnancy kind of ends up going away, because like you're grateful for at least what you have. And then that gratitude will kind of end up blossoming into more things that could definitely that you can become more grateful for. And there's many things that you can be grateful for, even if it's just for the minor things, even some of the big things, even being grateful for the things that you have had to go through to make you that stronger, better person. Those are things that you should definitely be grateful for. It's hard to be able to kind of look at them as blessings or gratitude, but as long as you get to that point, I think you'll kind of understand what I mean by that. And some of the topics that I come up with are only going to resonate with some people. It's only going to be a specific collective of group of people that are going to actually feel for what I'm talking about. And it makes me feel proud about myself to be able to be this diverse everywhere, just because that I like a lot of things and I don't like a lot of things. But because I don't like them doesn't mean I don't want to talk about them, because there's always something interesting in a lot of different things. Even when it comes to the simple things, and even when it comes to the itty-gritty, nasty stuff that nobody wants to talk about or anything like that, just because if there are some things that people want to talk about or want to hear, or people will kind of give that reassurance to some or from people, just so that we can all kind of click on the same page. And yes, we're all not going to click on the same page, but I know that as long as I'm not trying to force it onto people, or know that I can't always please everybody, because you can't please everybody, not everybody's going to be on the same page. And it kind of comes to the point of where you see that and you know that just because you can't please everybody, you kind of end up kind of shedding it off. You're just like, all right, bam, done, So that was the next thing, was that it's like, yes, it is stressful to try to get people on the same page or to come together. And, that's just the peace aspect, the peace, love, and positivity aspect that I'm trying to preach, because that, yes, we're not all going to be on the same page. Yes, that sometimes we are constantly fighting physically and mentally with each other. But, peace is something that is, I don't know. It's really hard to be able to find peace in a lot of things. And especially when it comes to being peaceful for what people actually might like or what might like. And I mean, if people are actually being able to come together, just being able to actually talk instead of voice your opinion and be judgmental, because there's always the specific sides of the spectrum. Some people are in the middle, some people are on the left or right, and that could resonate with a lot of different things. That being able to know that we can try to come together at least is the best thing, that brings me happiness. I have hope for that. I hate it of how judgmental and diverse that we are. It's good to have diversity, but for how much of a diverse culture that we are as human beings, because we have so many different cultures, we have so many different opinions, we have so many different things that go on in specific countries, that it makes it hard to be able to see that piece. And that's something why I do it, is because it's I want people to see that. Not everybody's going to feel that. Even some of the people that aren't even going to make it this far into the video aren't going to see that. But that's okay, because I'm still going to make sure that I can voice as much peace, love, and positivity as I possibly can. I try to get over it, because not everybody's going to resonate with me or you or the specific topic. So as long as we kind of just like, breathe, let it all out, it's going to be okay. Self-worth. Self-worth is another thing that, it's been fairly new, but because that of me trying to change for betterment, being able to see my own self-worth and being able to make sure that I can preach other people's self-worth is something that I want to be able to tell people all the time. You are worth it. No matter how much stuff you've gone through, this resonates with some of the other things of being able to be accepting of yourself, to be able to be accepting of what other people are and all these other things that it's like, at the end of the day, you're always there. Even at the beginning of your day, you're always there. You're always going to have to make sure that you can be there for yourself at all times. Self-love is kind of selfish, but being able to be happy with who you are, being able to be accepting of what you might have done, you've been changing to make sure that you can see that betterment is all that matters. That's going to help you be in that self-worth and that self-love aspect. And if you love yourself, then you can actually make sure that you can love another person, because if you don't love yourself, and you're constantly getting that validation from that other person, it makes it pretty hard. And that's either platonic or romantic. So take that as it will. And so the next one is the social media influence. Social media is a good and a bad thing. A lot of people are going to see it as a bad thing just because that there are so many toxic behaviors, toxic patterns that might end up happening in the specific algorithm that you might be stuck in. And that's the big thing lately, is being able to see that most of the social media that you see is just because that you like so specific things, or you're constantly following this type of page that is going to make sure that you follow all these other type of pages, or that you see the things that you're wanting to see, it can become really bad. It can, because social media has such a big presence on us, that being able to see that as long as you work past your algorithm, that you at least make a different algorithm for yourself of the things that you want to see, like positive quotes, positive motivational videos, positive things that can help you boost instead of putting you down. Social media has a big influence on when it comes to over-sexualization. I see it as a problem. It's not that I don't see it as sex being a problem, because we should be able to be open about sex. It is a natural thing that happens, not even when it comes to humans, but even specific animals. Sex has always been something that has been around for generations and generations and generations. But because we have became so over-sexualized when it comes to being able to see a female from a sexual presence or a male from a sexual presence, that being able to actually have a grasp on the constant over-sexualization that we have on one another is a bad thing. I do see it. When it comes to people, being over-sexualized with your body, it's not that you shouldn't be proud of yourself with your body. Be proud of who you are. If you're confident in your body, show it. I'm all for that. But there's that little part of it that kind of ekes at me a little bit, to the point where I'm like, what good is that really doing? There are a lot of good things, but there are always a lot of bad things. Social media just has that negative influence. It's going to be there, but a lot of things besides social media has that negative influence, and it just kind of depends if you're going to see it as a negative or a positive. Social media is not going anywhere. Everybody pretty much knows that, and so we kind of pretty much just need to make sure that we can grow with it. Find your algorithm that works for you. Find the things that you actually do want to make sure that you are seeing, to make sure that you can boost yourself up physically or mentally, because there's a lot of good things that we can absorb. It just depends on the information that you are constantly delving into the entire time that's going to make you either peak or go down. That depends on the person, and it requires self-control. Even with the over-sexualization, we have to make sure that we have self-control over these things. Otherwise, when it comes to our relationships, platonic or romantic, and we're having this over-sexualization with each other, that it's probably going to turn into some really bad things, where we can't look at each other without having to look at them sexually, or not think about these sexual aspects. And the over-sexualization is just an example, but it's the biggest thing that I do see as a problem with being able to look at a human being a human, and not having to look at them as a sexual object or anything like that. Sex is sacred. It's something that I've had to learn. I've had my own downfalls when it comes to this thing, but that's just because, being a teenager in the glow up of social media, that didn't really help, hormonal boys. But, it's something that I've had to learn. Everybody learns this at their own pace, and it's not that I'm trying to force you. You can do whatever the heck you want to do. Sex is a good thing, but it's like it use your discernment. That's it. The very last thing is just putting emotion into what you want to do. Because I said this earlier, is that it's like putting yourself into your dreams into your desires is going to make it a creative aspect, even if it's not actually creative like art, video making, music, etc., that if you at least put your emotion into it, you put your story into it, even the topics that I speak about, as long as I do kind of put some emotional aspect into it, it kind of makes it to where I can relate a little bit more, and some people will be able to relate a little bit more because it's from the human aspect, from that topic, that makes it creative, that makes it just, love doing of what I do. And even going back to the social media, I love doing what I'm doing just because that social media, my stuff is going to be timeless in some way, shape, or form. Yes, there is that point of where if you're not consistent, you might get lost and you're not going to be able to actually have your whole push or motive or being able to have your social media presence. But my consistent social media presence isn't really my biggest issue. It's just making sure that people can actually see. That's all I want, is make sure that we can see, more than just the two eyes, but even from the intuition part right here. Didn't mean to do that. From right here, making sure that you can still see regardless, past the fog, past everything that you're focused on, which the blinders, being able to actually lift that up and being able to see everything around you. There's so many things that what I do, why I do what I do, there's so many positives to it. Like, yes, there probably are negatives to it. Some people might tell me that there are negatives to it, but I don't really see it. I'm trying to make sure that I constantly evolve every day. Trying to make sure that I learn new things every day. I'm learning new things about myself every day. People have something to teach me just as much as I can be able to teach other people too. But that's pretty much it. I hope everybody can kind of have that good grasp of why I do what I do. It's pretty interesting. Like I said, I think differently than other people might think. So you might be able to see that as a bad thing, or you might be able to at least see it as a good thing, just to know that it's, for how diverse I am, is that it's like regardless of understanding, there's always something that I can understand. If I don't understand it, I'm going to make sure I can find a way to understand it, at least in any way, shape, or form. But like, comment, subscribe, and share. I have some pretty other interesting topics that we're going to be talking about, so please stay tuned, and I hope you guys have a great night.